Hello and welcome to the For Pete's Sake podcast. I'm David O'Connor with eXp Realty.
And I'm Alex Blancarn with eXp Realty.
And today we're going to be taking you through the February 2023 Peterborough City Market Stats. We also got our tip of the month, or deal of the month, a news segment called Mortgage Corner. And we also got some other news. And most importantly, if you've been paying attention, Alex lost a few bets in the last little while. He's got to eat some donuts on air. So stay tuned for that.
Yeah, today's the day.
Alex, how's it going, buddy?
Good. How you been, brother?
Good. You hungry?
Yeah, getting there. It's getting close to dinner. So, yeah, definitely getting a little hungry.
Yeah. You ready for your donuts?
Yeah, I was going to bring a fork and knife, but you said you were going to make fun of me. So,
yeah, I said if you were using a fork and knife to eat the donut on air, this relationship would end.
Yeah, and I can't have that.
Well, we can save that for the end.
Yeah.
So there's for those. I dropped off a Tim Hortons box that he hasn't opened yet, and there's a mystery surprise donuts inside. So there was a couple of bets we made that Alex is a brilliant guy. I just happened to get the upper edge on a couple of them. I'm sure it will turn around in the future, but I'm extra excited because if you don't know Alex, he's a super healthy guy. I've never seen him actually eat food. He just drinks water. So I don't know how his body's going to respond to eating sugary donuts. So stay tuned for that at the end.
Yeah, straight water diet.
But hey, before we get into the presentation, there's a lot of news happening in the Canadian/Ontario real estate world. What do you got for us?
Yeah, so some big reports since we last spoke. The first one that came out was the GDP reading for Q4 of 22. So it came in at 0%. So a 0% change quarter over quarter, which is not great considering the population of Canada increased by about 360,000 people. So when we see that large of an increase in population, typically you see an increase in GDP as well. So not great to see, kind of no movement at all in terms of the GDP numbers. A reminder to everybody, a recession is defined as two negative quarters of GDP. So two back-to-back negative quarters of GDP. So we're at zero. So if we go down 0.1, we're at negative 0.1%. That would count as a negative quarter of GDP. Now, on the bright side, we did see the January estimate come in to be around 0.3%. Now, it's an estimate, but, a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel there, maybe. In terms of inflation, we saw the January 2023 CPI come in at 5.9%. So what that means is we've seen an increase in the basket for CPI. So it's a weighted basket of goods and services, basically. And it's gone up 5.9% since last January. Now, we peaked at 8.1% in June of 2022. And yes, so these are year over year changes. So it's comparing June 2022 to June 2021, and it's an 8.1% increase in terms of the CPI basket. Now, when we're looking kind of at the breakdown of this CPI, we see that gas and food were both up month over month. So when we compare the gasoline and the food CPI from December to January 2023, we saw an increase there month over month. And those are kind of the two main pieces that continue to hurt, everyday Canadians like ourselves. Now, what we did see was employment numbers for January come in at 150,000 new jobs for the month. And most of those were reported as full-time workers. 121,000 of them were full-time workers. And the reason I bring all of this up is because it kind of plays into the large announcement today. Today is March 8th, 2023, and the Bank of Canada came out for their policy rate meeting today. And there was no media brief today, so we didn't get to hear Tiff talk. But what we did see was they held their policy rate at 4.5%. So no interest rate increase. And although we didn't hear Tiff talk, there was a statement that was released on the Bank of Canada's website. And I took a little excerpt out of that. And here's how it reads. So They said in their statement, the governing council will continue to assess economic developments and the impact of past interest rate increases and is prepared to increase the policy rate further if needed to return inflation to the 2% target. So, Dave, a lot of news there, but what do you make about that statement from the Bank of Canada?
Yeah, so it sounds like there was no rate increase today, as we expected, because when they met on January 25th, they made a commitment to do a pause on rate hikes. So it would be a bad look for them if they did do an increase today. So we weren't expecting that. It does sound like I guess in layman terms, they are setting up the volley for potentially doing a rate hike either when they meet in April, and then if not April, June. So I think they're laying the foundation for a future conversation, which is going to be probably a mid-year rate increase, is what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with you there. And just kind of a side note on why I brought all of those statistics up. All of these things that happen on a macro level in terms of what's happening with Canada, in terms of CPI, in terms of job numbers, in terms of GDP, all of this impacts real estate. The Bank of Canada, it impacts buyer sentiment. And as we know, the market is dictated by interactions between buyers and sellers. And if there's no interaction from buyers because they're hearing all this doom and gloom and they want to put their buying plans on pause, well, then there's no real estate market. So that's why all of these kind of macro statistics are important to kind of look at and to monitor.
No, exactly. We're going to get into it, but I'm just going to tease that it seems like a perfect storm is starting to brew where we could see the buyers come back to the table, and we could be going back into a seller's market this spring. So let's jump into the February 2023 market stats.
Yeah, let's dive into them.
We're going to do this is year over year, February to February. So February 2023 to February 2022. The average sales price has declined 24.3%. New listings has declined 45%. Number of new sales has declined 52.4%, and the days to sell has increased 257.1%. Alex, what do you think when you see these numbers?
Well, I see a lot of declines.
Yeah.
I see a lot of declines. I mean, days to sell is obviously increased, but yeah, a lot of declines there. It's no surprise really when we think about February of last year. We'll kind of get into it here, but I think we saw like an $800,000 average price for a residential home in the city. So yeah, it's no surprise that we have seen declines since then in terms of average sale price. Seeing the number of sales drop by 50% is a little alarming though.
Yeah, no, that one jumped out at me. And also it's interesting or important to note that we're now comparing to February 2022, which was the apex of that boom we saw last year. So that's why I wasn't surprised to see the days to sell being like 257%, because this time last year you just had to throw a listing up and it was selling. So I think the average, we'll get into it, but people were holding for a week and then it was off market.
And I think the average days to sell, I think they came in at 8 days to sell for February 2022. So yeah, like just a week basically to sell.
But we talked about it before. If they weren't holding, it would be 3 days, right? They were just holding to get exposure for the property, get those out of town buyers up for the weekend, hold the competition, put buyers against each other, drive up the price. Everyone knows how it works for when we're in that kind of market. But that's what we're comparing to, though, the February 2022, which was the peak of the boom we saw last year.
Yeah. So yeah, there's kind of the graph there for a visual representation. I mean, you do see it increase from November. You see kind of the bottom there in November, and we've increased since then. Not the bottom of the market, but the bottom of the average price. You can see it there now. Numerically came in at 575 in November, and we're up to 606 basically in February. Now, what's great to see is the average price increase month over month there. A slight increase from January to February. So yeah, great to see there. Another thing to note is we're almost at February 2021's average price. When you look back, we kind of went like this, and now we're kind of back to February price of 21, which, I mean, you look at the year over year change of 2020 to 21, that's a pretty substantial change, going from 474 to 604 in a year.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this before, but it's interesting. It looks like with the information we have in front of us that this is the new baseline. Where if you look at 2019, 2020, the way we were trending up, then we know 2022 was definitely a big outlier, but there was also a big influx going into 2021. So are we in the middle of a longer spike, or is this price point we're seeing in 2021, 2023 the new kind of like baseline price?
Yeah, for sure. And then looking at the new listings, just look at that small bar in December of 22. A huge drop off there.
Sad little bar.
It's a sad little bar, and it looks like we've almost doubled the number from December. You see 46 in December and 77 in February. Now we do see the new listings drop month over month, and in terms of the last 5 years, that's the lowest February of the last 5 years in terms of new listings.
And this is the one that, when I say worries me, if it does seem like, as we'll get into, that the buyers are getting ready to go, and if the listings aren't there, then we're going to be spiral into another seller's market. We're going to see prices go up. We're going to see competitions again. So I was surprised to see the 77 there, because again, we know the last 2 years are could be a bit of anomalies, but when you compare it to 19 and 20, and we're still down. So it's part of the formula or the recipe for maybe a spike in a busy spring market.
And yeah, note on that. And I'm kind of checking active listings in Peterborough, as well as the pending listings. So pending listings are anything that hasn't closed, and the pending timeline there is 0 to 180 days. So anything that has sold basically and hasn't closed in the last 180 days. Now, the ratio is getting larger and larger for active to pending. We're seeing more pending than we are active. And that is scary to track that day over day and see that the number of active listings compared to the pending listings, they've decreased. And we're seeing no inventory on the market, and buyers are scooping up these homes quickly.
Yeah. We were talking about this. The best way to explain it is, because there's more sales than new listings coming, but we haven't felt it yet because there's the existing inventory. Yeah. But what's happening is the market is starting to eat up that inventory, but we don't notice it yet in the numbers. And it's the reason why we haven't spun into a seller's market officially. But I'm saying these are the warning signs that as soon as we eat through that inventory and then there's more sales than listings, then as I said, we're in for a medium to like potentially heavy buyer's market this spring. Yeah.
And number of sales, you see a slight decline there month over month. Again, this was one of the shocking ones to see only 50 sales in a February. I mean, look at those last 5 years. You got 2019 is the lowest at 69. But 50 sales in a February, look at what it was last year at 105. Sure. It's tough to see the 50 sales, and it's gone down month over month. You look at December, which felt so slow, and there were 45 sales.
Yeah, and we were talking offline how this number could be skewed a bit because, say, last year, for example, there wasn't a lot of successful bids that had conditions in place.
Right.
So
right.
if they had, so this 50, there could be homes that are sold conditionally in February that won't firm up till March.
Right.
So you're not seeing those in these numbers. That's why I think the March numbers, when we do the next episode, are going to be huge. I think we're seeing all the signs, but I think when we see the March numbers, I wouldn't be surprised if we're officially, spring's going to kick off and we're going to be officially in the seller's market.
Yeah. And now the active listings to number of sales there. So active listings are green and sales are blue. So we can see the number of active listings are almost double the amount of sales. So it looks like close to 100 active listings. And as we know, there were 50 sales for the month of February.
Yeah, and you see it is the green, like the active listings is trending down a little bit. And I do think in the next couple of months we're going to see those numbers being or the bars of pretty similar heights, or these numbers being pretty similar.
Yeah, so looking at it here, kind of year over year, active listings in February of 22. Remember, this was the peak of the market. We saw 67 active listings. We've got 97 in 23. Number of sales, we had 105 sales in February. Compare that to active listings of 67, and you can see a bit of a skewed ratio there. And then we've got 50 sales. So the ratio is almost flipped. We almost see double the amount of sales as active listings last February, and it's flipped this February where we see almost double the number of active listings as we do sales.
Yeah, and I do think we're going to see those numbers balance out a little bit in the next few months.
Look at my favorite is look at November, 51 sales, 146 active listings.
Yeah.
Or better yet, September of 22, 164 active listings and 66 sales. And then in terms of days to sell, look at the graph there. We saw a downtick month over month, which is a huge bonus for sellers. It looks like we're around that 25 mark. Yep, so 25 exactly. And I lied in the intro. The number of days to sell in February of 22 was actually 7 days, not 8 days. So how nuts is that? 7 days to sell your home. Again, we were chatting, that's mostly from the hold. We're not seeing that as frequently now. Sometimes we'll see a 24-hour irrevocable, which can sometimes encourage bidding. But we're seeing, we're not seeing a lot of properties hold these days.
But what another indicator to pay attention to is just that month over month drop. So that 34 in January to 25 in February.
That's a good point.
Yeah, we'll be into the teens most likely in March, and then if we get back into a little bit of holding, I don't think we're going to go into a market like last year. I think we're in for a more traditional spring market.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the spring, usually there's less inventory than there are buyers, and then if it is a traditional spring market, you could see a little bit more inventory later in the spring, and those numbers. Days to sell start to go up again, but I do anticipate this number to go down at least for March, April.
And it's cool to see the average days to sell there. I think it was from 2019 and 2020. For February, they were 24 and 25. So we're right on par with 2019 and 2020. It's just those last 2 years, 22 and 21, where we saw 8 and 7 days to sell, which is nuts.
Yeah.
And then, we got months of inventory, so a slight uptick there, where we're almost at 2.5. I would say it's maybe 2.4-ish in terms of month of inventory. So this doesn't track the decimal, but I'd say it's 2.4, maybe up from 2.2 last month. An uptick there in months of inventory. Yeah,
and I know we talk about this every podcast, but is it under 3 or is it under 4 is considered a seller's market?
I think it's under 3. Yeah, I think it's under 3, and then 3 to kind of 5, 6 is balanced, and then you've got anything over 5, 6 is kind of a buyer's market.
Yeah, so we're sitting still in a seller's market, as we talked about with the news today. It's going to have buyers feeling a lot better. I don't want to spoil the mortgage corner that's coming up, but there's a lot of big indicators too that buyers are getting fully equipped for this spring market. Here you go, buddy. The new segment.
Yeah, so we got a fun new segment here, and we're looking at Mortgage Corner from a site called rates.ca, and this is a public website. They released a public piece of news about their website in January, at the end of January, kind of what's going on and what they're seeing in terms of mortgage apps and renewals and refinance. So that's kind of what's going on with this graph. But there were a couple of key points that I wanted to highlight from their article. So month over month, we saw renewals up 107% and purchase quotes up 92%. So we also saw year over year, and that's what this graph measures. So compared to January of 22, renewals were up 49% and purchase quotes were up 48%. So now the renewals side of things there at 49%, it's not really surprising as rates have likely climbed since these borrowers had their initial mortgage and now their term is coming due and they're looking to shop around for a lower rate than what's going on maybe with their current lender. Now, what's surprising is the 48% increase in mortgage applications. So if we think about what happened last spring, most of those buyers would be gearing up for their spring market purchase in January. They'd want to get their pre-approval in January and they'd get, everything ready and good to go for their February, March purchase so that they could close with that pre-approval in place. So seeing that we're seeing a 48% increase year over year in mortgage applications, that means there's more buyers out there trying to get mortgages than there were last year, which is crazy considering what happened in spring of 22.
Yeah, now, what happened last year is people were taking on a lot of risk and they weren't going through these proper processes. They were going in clean without doing their financial due diligence just because of the urgency of the market they were in.
And we've got a really maybe a surprise here for you. I don't know if I told you about it, but there's a surprise piece of news that I'm going to talk about as well in terms of the mortgage space. Another interesting statistic here from their article, they saw fixed quotes increased. They were up 75% over the past 4 months. So that's compared to variables. So 75% of borrowers are looking towards a fixed rate compared to a variable. And I mean, that's kind of obvious. Borrowers are going to try and maximize their purchasing power. And right now we're seeing fixeds lower than the variable rates. So that's why we're kind of seeing that influx of borrowers turning towards the fixed rate. Another interesting fact was they saw down payment amounts had dropped by 7%. Now, this could be due to falling home prices, but it also could be due to buyers putting less down and taking an insured mortgage, which is any mortgage where you're putting less than 20% down. Because when you take an insured mortgage, most of the time you can get a lower interest rate because there's less risk to the lender because that mortgage is insured. Now, although they are taking a lower interest rate and they're putting less down, sometimes they can get their monthly payment to be lower, even though they have to pay for that cost of mortgage insurance. But what's great is that mortgage insurance cost is actually spread throughout the term. So if you're taking a 5-year fixed rate mortgage, you actually pay that insurance and it's spread throughout those 5 years. Now, overall, we saw an increase in mortgage activity. And this could be due to the seasonality of the market. These buyers kind of gearing up for the spring market, but it also could be due to buyers thinking that this is the potential bottom of the market. I know we've kind of talked about it a bit.
Yeah. The other thing to note here with these, like it's January over January, it's just that most lenders, not all, but most lenders will hold a rate for 120 days. So when we see this January spike, as I said, it's people potentially retooling for the spring market.
Absolutely. Yeah. And here's that piece of mortgage news I wanted to tell you about.
Yeah.
So OSFI, which is the Office of the Superintendent of Financial Institutions, super long name, so just call them OSFI. Basically, their job is to regulate and supervise federally regulated financial institutions like banks, insurance companies, and pension plans. So what they're looking at right now is they're potentially changing their loan to income threshold guidelines So typically right now you can qualify for about 4.5 times your income. So let's say you make $100,000 a year, you can most of the time qualify for $450,000 for a mortgage. But this could be subject to change as per OSFI. This would limit the buyers to a lower mortgage amount, which would decrease risk for financial institutions and could potentially lower home prices as affordability gets pushed even further away. Now, if anything happens, keep an eye on the news. It's likely to come out in Q3 or Q4 of 2023, but that could be a huge change for the housing market.
Yeah, you got less spending power across the board. Huh?
Yeah, so I was thinking like that could drop, prices because I mean, if like we were saying earlier, the market is dictated by interactions between buyers and sellers. If buyers can't afford to pay $650 for your house because they can't qualify for that amount for their mortgage, well, then you're going to have to drop the price if you want to sell. So we could see that have an impact on housing and the prices of homes.
Definitely. And next up for you, we have the tip of the month. So for this month, we decided to go with a pre-approval letter. So just tying into everything we just talked about, with all the uncertainty in the market, it's always great to go get your pre-approval from your lender. Now, I want to clarify, because I'm sure, Alex, you've run into this a lot. You'll deal with a buyer, and one of the first things you say, well, let's see what kind of budget you have to work with. So have you had a pre-approval? And they'll say, well, the bank told me I have about this, but that's great, but is an official like pre-approval letter? Because there's a big difference between Joe Bob at the bank telling you, yeah, the numbers look pretty good. You're probably good for about like 600 or so, and getting an actual pre-approval letter where they vet your debt to income ratios and they do everything. They give you a very firm number that we will lend you this amount of money. So we always think it's best to go get that pre-approval for a lot of different reasons. You got to know what budget you have to play with, but also financially, it can be very beneficial to you.
Yeah, huge benefit for the buyer financially, because like you're talking about, you lock in an interest rate, which is huge when we're seeing bond yields on the increase slightly, but that directly impacts your fixed rate. So if you could lock in, let's say at a 4.9% for 90 to 120 days, and you're able to purchase something when somebody who got a pre-approval maybe a month after you locks in at a 5.2% fixed rate, that's a huge difference, especially for your first term when most of your payments are going towards interest. That is a huge difference on your monthly payment.
And let's look just at last year. I know there was one rate increase that was a full point, right? And potentially there was two increases in a period where you could have had your 120 days. Now that is 120 days till the deal closes, right?
Yeah.
So, but if we look at last year, that's 1.25, 1.5. You potentially could have saved yourself last year. And
absolutely, yeah. If you were going variable, which a lot of them were last year, because it increased their buying power, and if you didn't lock in with a variable, maybe you got your pre-approval and your buying power decreased because you didn't go and get that pre-approval, 60 days before, kind of thing.
Yeah, and maybe you're a buyer and maybe you're not sure if the time is right, but why not go in, get your pre-approval letter? You can always renew it, every so many months, just in case that perfect property materializes and it's time to go. It's kind of like we talked about a couple of podcasts ago. I think my tip of the month was be ready. And on the buyer side, this is one of the ways you can be ready, is have your pre-approval in place, ideally before you start looking. But you never know. Circumstances change, and maybe you didn't think you were going to be moving quick. But yeah, this is a good way to be prepared.
And a huge benefit, again, for the buyer is when you're doing an offer for a seller, it shows that you have the financial ability to purchase their house.
Yeah. And then I've had buyers that were comfortable sharing that information, and it makes the seller feel a lot better. And when you're in competition too,
it helps for sure.
It's definitely could be an advantage for you. And now we got for you the deal of the month. Alex, let us know about the deal of the month.
Yeah, so welcome to 762 Water Street. Why is this the deal of the month? Well, as you can see there, it's got 6 bedrooms. 6 bedrooms on Water Street. And for those that aren't from Peterborough, Water Street is one of the main roads in Peterborough. And we kind of highlighted this one as a student rental because there is a bus stop just down the road from this property that goes right up to Trent University, which is on the north end of Water Street. So looking at this one, I mean, it looks pretty good for 667. Finish level, it's looking pretty nice for 667. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, as you know, Alex, I've been through this property. It shows extremely well. There's a lot of recent work has gone into this. It's got a new roof, 2022, new furnace, 2022. Windows are newer. They have a new on-demand hot water heater, 2022, and also a brand new AC unit, brand new deck out back. They refurbished the kitchen. Great layout. Again, for student rental. And here's the bonus. So it's 6 bedrooms. And I know you're going to talk about the numbers soon, but one interesting thing to note, as you're seeing in these photos here, there's a heated garage in the back that has its own electrical, and it would be a perfect either storage space, or it looks like it was previously used as an art space, and that could be additional revenue in addition to the 7 rooms. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity here.
Yeah, a lot of great opportunity. Now, let's jump into the numbers because, yes, this is a great looking product for 667. Beautiful home. But where this property really shines, it's in the numbers. So the listing here, it advertises a potential market rent of $800 per room, which, as we know, kind of watching market rents, it's not out of the question, especially for a property that looks as good as this property does. So let's run the numbers on it. So 6 bedrooms at $800 per room. That gets you a potential monthly income of $4,800. Okay, so what are your expenses? Well, let's hop into the mortgage payment. That's going to be your largest expense. So if you're paying, purchase price for this property is the list price. So we're purchasing at 667. We've got an estimated monthly payment of $3,182 per month for your first 5 years in a fixed rate of 5.24%, which I found on RateHub. Now, it wasn't the lowest interest rate, but I don't believe it was the highest either. But I tried to pick one that was kind of on par with what we're seeing in terms of the big 5 banks. Now, if we're looking at a mortgage payment of $3,182 a month, we can also look at the expenses, which could be taxes. So your tax bill for the month would be $327, and that is $327 a month. That's your 2022 property tax divided by 12 gets you $327 a month. So what does that leave you with? Well, that leaves you with $1,291 a month. How crazy is that? Now, you may have some other expenses on there, such as maintenance, vacancy, utilities, insurance, but maybe you can get $800 a room and they pay the utilities. That knocks that one.
This is definitely a plus because, again, you get 6 students in there, splitting $300-400 worth of utility bills, an extra like $40-50 for them. That's pretty standard in this community, to be honest. And again, if you get that art space in there, that's just bonus. I think that number would potentially increase as well. And again, you'll probably talk about this some more, but we're talking year 1.
Yeah. And that's the best part. Like, year 1 is typically the hardest year to hold an investment property because, I mean, the numbers only get better as you do pay down your mortgage. But this is year 1, and you're pocketing, maybe after all of those expenses, you throw maybe property management in there. We didn't want to do a deep dive on this one just for time's sake, but you're probably pocketing around, $400 a month, and you're putting 20% down.
Yeah, and that's and we're padding some of those numbers as well. So that's the thing that's interesting. Here's another bonus pro tip for student houses. what I like about this one is because they convert some of the space on the main floor into rooms. The student houses with less social space tend to be the ones that don't have the parties.
Yeah,
It's a little, we don't talk about those kind of things, but it is a concern obviously when you have a student house. This one has great lounge space, but it's definitely not a kind of property that they'd be rolling kegs into. So.
And that's another thing with expenses here, right? Like maybe you normally throw 100, 150, $200 on maintenance. Maybe if you're renting to students, you lean towards the 300 to $400 a month just to be extra safe. Maybe there's a hole in the wall here. Maybe there's, a smashed oven there. Students can be hard on a property. So it's good to just prepare for that with your maintenance budget.
Yeah. Do you mind while you're live on there? Do you mind bringing it up on the map there?
Yeah. Let's pull that up.
So I think when it comes to investment properties too, the reason I like students is just because if you get a nice long-term tenant in there, it can be great. But what sometimes happens is I just had this happen recently on a listing I had on Edinburgh. But you have these long-term tenants, and the rents are now nowhere close to the current market rents, and it can become very difficult to sell. Obviously, the pros to have long-term rentals, having people in there is it's less demand on you. You have a good tenant in there, you don't really worry about it for years. With students, maybe you get a group of students that want to stay for multiple years, but a lot of times you're doing annual leases and things like that. But the pro is that they're coming out and you can adjust the rents, as the market changes. Looking on the map here, if you look, it's just north of Park Hill, and I love this area. You're walking distance to downtown, and as Alex mentioned, the Trent Express comes right along there, and Water Street's a one-way street going north to Trent, and then George Street that parallels is the one-way street coming the other way, and there's a bus stop right over there, about a 3-minute walk. So primo location for definitely for Trent students or rental in general, because you're so walking distance to amenities.
And that's Trent University, kind of up there where my mouse is. So it's just kind of north of Water Street. Great, fantastic park right here as well. I've definitely done a bit of fishing in this part right here. I mean, I've caught nothing but seaweed, but there's great entrances into the river there where you can go for a swim, you can go for a paddleboard, you can go for a canoe up the river, go underneath the Park Hill Bridge here. Fantastic park right here with a jungle gym and a basketball court. I've definitely played there a couple of times as well. So yeah, it's a good area, and it's fantastic, I think, for a student rental with Trent University just being up the road here, and at 667 for that type of property. I mean, you can't go wrong.
And as I said, I've been through it. The bones are really good. Obviously, I want to preface this, or you always want to get your home inspection and things like that. But they did a great job of doing updates, but preserving the elements of a century home that people love, like the trim work and the staircase and things like that. I'm a big fan of this one.
Yeah, it's a nice property.
All right, so Alex, now's the time, buddy.
Yeah, so the big Hortons unboxing here.
All right, so for those that maybe weren't tuning in for the whole podcast here, we had on some of the previous episodes, there were some bets that I got lucky enough to be successful in, and there was 2 bets, and the loser had to eat a Tim Hortons donut. So we were supposed to do it on air. A couple of listeners, I didn't think people were paying that much attention, but reached out and they're like, "When's Alex going to eat his donuts?" So now's the time. So if you undo the box there, I'll let you know what you're dealing with.
Yeah, so today's the day. I haven't looked inside the box yet, so let's see what we're working with here.
So you got a chocolate glaze, and I let you off easy. We got a Timbit, but it's a birthday cake. Now, the original plan was I was going to surgically put the birthday cake
inside
in the hole, right? That was my creative side, but as you can see, with all the glaze and stuff, that didn't really work out. So you got a chocolate glaze and a birthday cake Timbit to deal with.
Well, I'm fired up here. Thanks for the donut. It's a big change from my water diet. So yeah, I appreciate it. Here's first bite.
And let's see how Alex's body responds to having sugar for the first time in probably a decade.
Yeah, I'm gonna be up all night.
You're going to be texting or calling me with podcast ideas at 1 a.m. tonight.
Yeah.
What do you think? Could you get into this donut intake?
It's worth losing the bet for. I'll tell you that. I mean, it's a free donut. We got to come up with a new bet for next month.
Yeah, so when you were thinking, I know we have the lingering bet about where the market's going to end this year that we did in the year in review, so we still have that one pending.
Let's do a fun one here that everyone can kind of do. Average price. I'm thinking average price in March is $640 to $650.
Wow, that's a jump.
Yeah, I think we're seeing $640 to $650.
It went up about, I don't know, roughly about 5. I think you could be right, but if you want to do it as easy as the 140 and I'll go under.
No way. You got to do. Well, actually, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, because that gives you.
If it's above 640, I win. If it's below 640, you win.
All right, and
that's easier. Then we have a winner every time.
I don't feel good about this one, but can I pick my donut?
No. What I'm gonna do is get a chocolate glazed donut and a birthday cake Timbit, and I'm gonna put it inside.
If only
that's what you've got in store for you next month.
There you go. I'm looking forward to it.
All right, brother.
Alex, again, thanks for all the work you put into this, putting everything together. Appreciate that. I appreciate you. If you go into sugar ketosis, call me, call a friend. We're here for you. But thanks again, man. And I'll catch you on the next one. Are you gonna?
I appreciate it, brother. Thanks for the donut. Thanks for your time and your insight. Appreciate you as well. And and here's the sign off, folks. Until next time. That's all, folks. Take care.